Hello everyone, Nubkeks here, and welcome to today's video for Heroes of the Storm. This is going to be more of a podcast type video, so there's not going to be anything too important on the screen. If you want to stick on the audio in the background while you're doing something I like to do with videos quite a lot, feel free to do so. I'll let you know if I do put anything overly important on the screen. I'm not planning to though, so you shouldn't have to worry about that at all. And yeah, this is also part of a series that I'm probably going to be doing, because I've got quite a lot to say on this issue, which is the question of hero design in Heroes of the Storm that is anti-fun, that is just extremely annoying to play against, and that makes the game quite off-putting in quite a lot of situations, actually, in quite a lot of situations, for quite a few heroes. For example, I know that one of the big bugbear topics with the communities is, of course, Overwatch heroes being introduced to Heroes of the Storm. So again, if you've got any thoughts on that, or if there's any other aspects of the game that you find anti-fun that you'd like to see me address during the series, do feel free to leave that in the comments below and I will get to it. I'm not going to be talking about Overwatch in this particular video, but I will do a video particularly dedicated to Overwatch heroes coming up pretty soon, and the impact that's having on game design. In today's video, I want to talk about one hero in particular that's very current, that's very recent, and that makes it, for me, extremely concerning. Because what's Blizzard doing? Putting this hero and this talent build into the game this recently. It's not an excuse like, well, it's been there, you know, they put it in 2 years ago, they put it in 1 year ago. It's just simply outdated. It represents an old philosophy for Blizzard. No, not at all. In fact, this hero came out very recently, and they've buffed it very recently. So they seem actually quite intent on having this be a viable build within the game, even though it's totally annoying and totally obnoxious, in my opinion, to play against. And I'm going to explain to you in this video why it is, and I'm going to compare it to several other heroes as well. So the hero in question is going to be Tyrande. It's going to be Tyrande and the Owl Build, the Sentinel build that she has. So this came in, obviously there was a Tyrande rework, that was in May of this year, where they first introduced this. And then they actually went and they buffed this build a month ago, at the end of August. They then went about a week ago, at the end of September, they slightly nerfed it, but it's still an overall buff, it's still a net buff. From the August buff. In August, they gave a talent, they added functionality to level 13 talent that reduced the cooldown of it by 4 seconds. They nerfed that to only decreasing the cooldown by 2 seconds, so it's still an overall buff to the ability. But yeah, what's going on with this? Let me explain it, especially for people that don't know why this is so bad, and I would encourage you to pay attention to the explanation, because there's some really key elements of what makes this anti-fun going into it. Actually, as we go into it, let me define anti-fun, because that's obviously going to be super important for this series. What do I think is anti-fun? Well, for the purposes of this series at least, the sort of definition I'm going in with is something is not fun to play against if it is something that you cannot really prepare for, or you cannot really react to, or you can't really counter. So, for example, let's say Nova's triple tap is an example of ability that isn't anti-fun, because you can react to it, you can prepare for it, and you can counter it. So what happens? Well, Nova, she puts a big indicator over your hero, and there's a big line going from Nova to your hero, and then she channels over the course of a couple of seconds and fires off 3 shots that do damage to you. So there's loads of room for counterplay here. Well, number one, they can hit structures, so you actually have time to, hide behind a wall or a fort when she aims it at you. There's time for your allied heroes to step in front to intercept the shots. There's time for your support, for your healer to heal you up so that you won't die from those shots. There's time for you to pop something like Ice Block yourself to dodge it. There's time for a lot of things like that. So there's loads of counterplay built into it. In fact, there's probably actually too much, considering that the ability is not very good and it's considered like a pretty rubbish heroic. Most people think it's really, really bad. But from a game design perspective, I think it's good because it does introduce quite a lot of counterplay. There's ways to play around it. It's not really frustrating. It's not really annoying. I think ETC's Mosh Pit is a good example of an ability that's considered extremely powerful, massively powerful, but that does as well. It's not an anti-fun ability because there's plenty of scope to counterplay it. So, I mean, number one, obviously you do see it coming, right? Because it's a stun, a channeled stun centered around ETC himself. So you kind of know where it's going to be. It has to be where ETC is. Typically, ETC will power slide through and then cast the mosh pit. There's also a bit of a delay to the mosh pit cast itself. And crucially, of course, you know, you can interrupt it. You can interrupt it. So there's plenty of counterplay there. I mean, just a classic example, you might pick a hero like Li Ming and pick Wave of Force, that heroic, because that gives you a very consistent way to interrupt mosh pit. And then you kind of go into it knowing, okay, well, I'm going to make sure not to stay too near my teammates so that if ETC wants to get off a mosh pit, you know, he won't be able to catch me in it as well as my teammates. And I can then interrupt it immediately and save my team, right? That's a nice bit of counterplay. You can also see ETC power slides in. You go, ooh, he's going to pop mosh pit now. And then you've got that half a second delay where if you are quick enough, if you play it right, you can actually teleport out and then interrupt it. And yeah, I think that's quite nice in that sense, because there's so many different ways to counterplay the ETC, and for ETC to land a really good mosh pit against teams that can counterplay it, that can spread out, obviously requires a lot of skill as well. But you'll frequently see this. I think it's a testament to it in the game that, you know, people don't really rage very much against mosh pit. You know, classically, if ETC lands a really good mosh pit, very frequently the response that you'll see is, guys, we need to spread out. We need, you know, let's not get caught by this mosh pit again. Which immediately shows you that there's plenty of opportunity for counterplay there, right? Because the immediate response is, oh, we made a mistake, right? Or that ETC played it really well and we made a mistake. We can do better, right? There's so many options for counterplay. We need to spread out a bit more. We can't get caught by this again. You've got ways to play around it. I think that's kind of so that's the core of what makes something fun, or, well, more so anti-fun to play against. An anti-fun ability is something that you go, oh my god, this is so frustrating. There was no way for me to deal with this. There was absolutely nothing I could do. It's quite interesting to look at in terms of game design. I mean, like Kel'Thuzad is one of the most recent heroes. I'll just mention this briefly. I'll come back to this in another video. But if you ever notice when you look at hot slogs, because on hot slogs it sorts heroes by burst damage and sustained damage. And one of the things you'll notice when you look at this list is that historically, for a very long time now, burst damage heroes always have very bad win rates in the game, whereas sustained damage always have higher win rates. Why is that? What's going on there? Why do sustained damage heroes have such a higher win rate than burst damage? And why has it been the case for so long? Why doesn't Blizzard go in and buff those burst damage heroes a lot? Why not? Well, one of the big concerns, of course, and this was a concern historically in the game, where burst damage heroes were very strong, is that burst damage, inherently by default, removes a lot of the opportunity for counterplay, because you get hit by this burst of damage, and then, hey, you're just dead, right? That's what burst damage does. It kills you very, very quickly. If you get bursted in the course of half a second, you kind of go, there's nothing I could have done about that. That's quite annoying, isn't it? Whereas sustained damage dealers aren't as frustrating because it takes them a much longer time to do their damage. So there's plenty of opportunity there for you to start, you know, doing things to deal with it. So I think that's an interesting thing, which I'll probably come back to in another video, is diving into that sort of question. Though I will touch on Chromie in particular in this video. Yeah, all right, let's talk about Tyrande now. Let's talk about Tyrande. What does she do? Again, bearing in mind the idea of counterplay that's so obnoxious. This comes down to her Sentinel ability and the Sentinel talent build. So the ability, let's talk about what it does. So this is her W ability. It has an 18-second cooldown, costs 70 mana. This is the one where she throws out an owl that travels across the battlefield. So it's like, it comes from Tyrande. It's this narrow, straight skill shot. The owl comes out. It actually moves quite fast, and it travels across the entire map. It does reveal things in its path. It does damage to the first enemy hero that it hits, and it will reveal that hero for 5 seconds. On top of this, by default, there's a quest built in, which is that every 8 heroes that you hit with the Sentinel will permanently decrease the mana cost by 10 and cause it to pierce an additional target. And you can stack, it's a repeatable quest, you can stack this up multiple times for, you know, multiple stacks of mana cost reduction and just piercing more and more heroes. And of course, it becomes easier to repeat the quest every time you do it, because if you pierce more heroes and hit more heroes, then you're building up more stacks so you can finish that quest faster. There's a level 1 talent called Ranger that goes with this as well. There's only 2 talents that really fit into this build that make it super annoying. And this one's the worst one, actually. This is Ranger, which increases the width of Sentinel by 25%. Alright, makes it easier to hit. But it makes it deal more damage based on distance traveled, up to 75% more damage. On top of this, there's also another repeatable quest built in, which is that hitting enemy heroes with Sentinel increases the maximum damage bonus by 3%. I've seen this. She's super popular at the moment, by the way. Super popular hero at the moment. I see her nearly every game. High level play in EU, kind of playing with Master, Grandmaster. See her all the time. She's actually, I looked it up. Currently, at the time of recording, right, Tyrande is in the top 10 most popular heroes for Master MMOR players, which is, it's quite a broad range, to be fair. It incorporates, I'd say, some of Diamond, all of Master, all of Grandmaster. It's extremely broad. It's too broad, but nonetheless, that's the best thing we've got on Hotslogs. She's in the top 10 most popular heroes, and with this particular build has a 55% win rate. So it's obviously, it's very popular and it's very successful as well. Pretty comparable to the other top 10 heroes at that particular level of play. Of course, the one exception being Genji, who has the unique honor of being the only hero in the top 10 most popular heroes. And he's pretty high up the list as well in terms of popularity at Master MMOR play. That has a negative win rate. So yeah, well done, everyone. Picking Genji all the time and losing with him. You guys are doing great. Keep it up. Anyway, so yeah, it's very popular, but I see her consistently. She stacks this quest up to about 50 times, which means she's hit about 50 heroes with Sentinel, which gives it 150% bonus damage on top of the already 75% bonus damage. Quite consistent that they're able to achieve that in a game. And after hitting 50 heroes, I mean, we're easily talking about piercing over 5 heroes and having virtually no mana cost on the ability. So you should pierce the entire team, basically. Level 13, then we've got another talent that builds into this called Empower, which reduces the cooldown of Sentinel by 2 seconds. And every time it hits a hero, it reduces the cooldown by an additional 4 seconds. So yeah, all of this stuff combos together. So effectively what's going on is you have this ability that you throw out. It does more damage the further away you are from a hero when you hit them. So it does more damage if you hit heroes that are far away. Every time you hit heroes, you're permanently increasing the damage that it does. You're permanently building up to decreasing its mana cost, letting it pierce more targets, and you're reducing the cooldown of it every time that you hit it. That's what's going on there. So immediately... Actually, no. Before we jump into that, I want to compare it. I think this comparison will really illustrate the problems with this ability. I want to compare it to Sergeant Hammer, because Sergeant Hammer has an ability that's actually very similar, which is called Blunt Force Gun. And Blunt Force Gun, it's one of her heroic abilities, so it has a 70-second cooldown, costs 100 mana as well. And this fires a big missile across the battlefield, which does a big chunk of damage to everyone that it hits. So it's very similar, it's bigger, so it's easier to hit than Tyrande. It does a bit more damage as well, but I don't think this ability I don't have a problem with this one. Why not? What's the difference here? What makes Blunt Force Gun an acceptable ability, yet makes Tyrande Sentinel, which is so similar, a totally obnoxious ability that is awful game design? What's the big difference here? I want to compare it for two situations. Situation number one is you're just standing, in the lane, or you're with a couple of people just laning, normal laning phase. Situation number two is you're on the way to an objective. Let's say Infernal Shrines, right? You're going to the shrine to try to fight over it. You get hit by these abilities then. And let's look at this in terms of anti-fun, in terms of counterplay. Well, first of all, let's look at Sergeant Hammer, Blunt Force Gun. So what the key difference is, there's no quest built into it. There's no quest built into Blunt Force Gun. It does as much damage to targets that are in melee range of Hammer as targets that are halfway across the map. Whereas Sentinel from Tyrande does more damage the further away you are. And it has a much longer cooldown. That's I think those are the core differences. So, going into these situations, right? Let's say you're in the lane and you get hit by Blunt Force Gun. There's counterplay immediately to this. So you get hit by it, you can't dodge it. So in terms of reactivity, and this is something that happens with both of them, they're coming from across the map. You don't know they're coming. and you're focused on, in the lane, you're just focused on your laning, and then out of nowhere, off the side of your screen, comes this ability that's moving very quickly. So you're not focusing on Tyrande, you're not focusing on Sergeant Hammer, so you're not prepared to dodge this ability. It's very difficult to dodge it. Your reaction time, there's huge demands on the reaction time, especially you're in the lane, you're focusing on fighting the minions, you're focusing maybe on defending a merc camp, fighting the enemy heroes, and then from another angle entirely, from a hero that you're not even thinking about, this ability comes. It could come from any angle really, or a very wide variety of angles. It comes very quickly across your screen. So it's very hard to dodge. So you can be hit by this pretty consistently. Yeah, you can be hit by it fairly consistently because there's very little counterplay in terms of actually dodging that you're able to do because you don't have much warning at all, and you're not prepared to deal with it. However, for Sergeant Hammer, there's a massive cost to using this. Right? There's a huge cost. Number one, it's a heroic ability, and heroics are incredibly important to winning team fights. You want your heroics available for every team fight that you do. As well as this, blunt force gun, it's just as good in a team fight as it is. It does just as much damage in the team fight as it does as poking someone in the lane, right? It also has a really long cooldown. So there's so much motivation not to use it to poke someone in the lane, right? Because you're in the lane, you get hit by blunt force gun, what do you say? It's not that frustrating because you go, oh yeah, well, a chunk of damage just got knocked off of me. All right, fine. Well, now Sergeant Hammer doesn't have heroic. For the next 70 seconds, she doesn't have an heroic. So the enemy team's team fight is going to be much worse, right? It's going to be much worse. If an objective comes up in the next 30 seconds, we're going to have a big advantage because we're going to have one more heroic than they have because Sergeant Hammer's not going to have hers. So this is great. This is wonderful. On top of this, Sergeant Hammer can't do it very often. She can't do it very often. Number one, she doesn't have it before level 10, so she can't do it before level 10. Number two, it's got a 70-second cooldown, so she can only do it so many times per game. And then number three, it's not going to happen very often because the cost is so high, right? Because you're giving up a heroic ability, which you need for a team fight. Especially because it's post-level 10, where team fighting becomes increasingly massively important to the game. You're just not, Hammer's simply not going to use it to poke you from across the map because it's just not worth giving up an heroic ability that you want to save for the team fight. So there's huge motivation for Sergeant Hammer to simply use this in a team fight and not to use it to poke you across the map. So it's not going to be annoying you constantly, right? It's not going to be annoying you constantly. In comparison, Tyrande's Sentinel ability, she's got massive motivations to poke you constantly when you're in the lane. Massive motivations. Number one, there's quests built into it, right? There's quests built into Sentinel. So she wants to be hitting it as frequently as possible to stack up those quests. Number two, it's got a much shorter cooldown. It's not a heroic ability, so there's no cost to using it. Not really. In fact, the cost is to not using it because you want to be using it as often as possible to stack up your quests. Number three, it does more damage based on distance, right? So what that means is that it's more valuable to use it to poke someone that's in a different lane than it is to use it in a team fight, because it simply does far less damage in the team fight because people are closer to you. It doesn't do as much damage. So number one, there's no opportunity cost. You're not losing out on anything because you're just as good going into the team fight. The ability itself, by design, because of that ranger talent at level 1, is weaker in a team fight than it is poking someone at range. And number three, you've got huge motivation to actually use it out of the team fight all the time because you want to be stacking up your quests to make it more and more effective. And that's a massive issue because you get hit by this ability in the lane. What do you say? You go, oh, god damn it. That's what you say. And it can happen. Oh, by the way, it also happens from level 1 and it's got, an 18-second cooldown, so it happens fairly frequently. You say, god damn it, I've been hit by this. That's a big chunk of my life gone. That's 2 quests that have started to progress for Tyrande. There's no potential for us to counterplay. We can't go, oh, well, what if an objective comes up soon, we can force a fight? No, you can't, because it's going to be back off cooldown immediately, basically. Yeah, it's just bad. There's no counterplay. There's nothing you can do. This ability just appears out of nowhere, very hard for you to dodge. You get hit by it, and it's just like, ouch, that hurt a lot. That did quite a chunk of damage, and it's just, all it did is help Tyrande. There's literally no cost to her. There's actually only benefits to her from hitting me with this. So that's a massive contrast to Sergeant Hammer. Same thing going into an objective, like situation number 2. Imagine going into the objective on Infernal Shrines, yeah? situation number one, your team gets hit by a hammer blunt force gun. You go, ouch, that did a lot of damage. By the way, in terms of damage, by the way, Sergeant Hammer by default does about 3 times. So the blunt force gun by default does about 3 times as much damage as Sentinel does. But immediately, once you picked up that Ranger talent at level 1, which does 75% more damage on the Sentinel, Sentinel does about, well, roughly speaking, it probably does half the amount of damage of blunt force gun. Once you've stacked up that quest enough, like I said, an extra 150% more damage, it's not inconceivable that towards the end of the game, a Sergeant Hammer, a Tyrande Sentinel with fairly achievable stacks on her quest will actually do more damage than Sergeant Hammer's blunt force gun. The only difference is that Sergeant Hammer's will hit minions and structures and such, and is bigger, is wider. But Tyrande's will do more damage to heroes when she hits it. It's just ridiculous. But let's say, again, going into the team fight, approaching a team fight and an objective on, let's say, Infernal Shrines, for example, your team gets hit by both these abilities. What's your reaction? You get hit by Sergeant Hammers, you go, oof, that's a big chunk of damage. Ouch. However, there's counterplay, right? Because you go, well, now we're going into fighting the shrine, and Hammer doesn't have her heroic. So again, like I said before, that's a massive window of opportunity for your team to take advantage of. You know, like your healer has the opportunity to heal you guys up, and then, you know, you've got time to heal up, and then move in and fight over that shrine when you have an advantage now, right? Because Hammer's used that ability. She's bought her team some time because she did that damage to you. You guys are going in at a slight disadvantage because you got that damage on you, but you've got opportunities to heal it up and then to fight over that shrine, having one more heroic than the enemy team. In comparison, you get hit by Tyrande's ability. Your team gets hit by it. What do you say? You say, well, god damn it, right? It's just extremely frustrating. So you get hit by this, big chunk of damage off of everybody. By the way, though, you've just given her loads of stacks on her quest. So it's going to hit you even harder next time. Once she's level 13, of course. Once she's level 13, she's getting 4 seconds cooldown off of it. So it's 16-second cooldown by default. If she hits 3 heroes, there's going to be another owl coming in 4 seconds. If she hits 4 of you, there's no cooldown at all. It's coming straight away. So yeah, you then go into it going, well, we've just lost a big chunk of our health, and there's no opportunity for counterplay here. We've just given her loads of stacks. The cooldown's gonna be really short because she just hit us. We're in an awful like this. It's just really bad. There's just nothing to do. It's this very difficult ability to dodge because you're thinking about other things because there's so many other things to think about. Very difficult to dodge it. Comes out of nowhere, hits you. Very little counterplay, and in terms of preparing for it, because it comes so quickly from off of your screen. You haven't seen it coming. It's coming from off of your screen, and there's no opportunity once it's hit to actually make anything happen with it in comparison to Sergeant Hammer, where there is opportunity to make counterplay. You're still going to get hit by Hammer. It's still going to do a big chunk of damage. It's still hard to dodge, and it still hits hard, but there's so much opportunity for counterplay with Hammer. So that even though in both cases there's very little opportunity to prepare for and to dodge the ability, in the case of Hammer, there is potential to counterplay quite a lot actually, whereas with Tyrande, there isn't. And that's why it's so annoying. I think a good comparison as well is also Chromie. Chromie's another hero that's a bit of a problem hero. Like I said, burst mages tend to be. They do tend to be. But Chromie's a problem hero. And they've also changed Chromie very recently, and this is what's baffling to me. Because they basically buffed this build for Tyrande, while at the same time, the design team went and redesigned Chromie so that this very thing, this unforeseeable low-cost burst damage from long range isn't as big of a deal. What did they do with Chromie? Okay, so Chromie's very similar, right, in terms of this, because Chromie has got these very long-range, hard-hitting abilities. So, for example, you've got Sandblast, which is her Q ability, right? So this is, she fires off the Sandblast. Again, it's this quite long-range, narrow skill shot that hits hard. Then she's also got Dragon's Breath, which is her W, which is, again, very long range ability, which does damage in a small AoE, high damage in a small AoE. And Sandblast, by the way, that Q ability, her Sandblast has a 2.5 second cooldown, so it's a very, very short cooldown. But they reworked her because this was also quite annoying. Because again, you could be hit by Chromie's abilities off the edge of your screen, so you can't see them coming, and then bam, massive chunk of damage. Very annoying to play against. You get hit by this massive chunk of damage you couldn't see coming, and you kind of go, well, again, for Chromie, much like Tyrande, you kind of go, well, all it cost her was a couple of cooldowns. You know, Dragon's Breath is 12-second cooldown. That's it. The Sandblast is 2.5-second cooldown. You get hit by Sandblast, big chunk of your life is gone. Well, she's going to have it again, 2.5 seconds. That's annoying. But what did they do to Chromie? Well, number one, she did have an ability, which she used to get at level 11, because she gets her talents 2 levels earlier, that increased the range on these abilities. They removed that. So it's shorter range. This is important. Why? Because she can't hit you from like way off your screen anymore. It's very possible. Well, number one, that Chromie has to be relatively close to you, so you know to expect this to come, in comparison to Tyrande, who can hit you at any time from anywhere on the map. I mean, you could be doing something totally unrelated to Tyrande and the owl comes. Whereas Chromie has got to be near you. Also because she's got to be relatively near you, you do get vision on her, and both of Chromie's abilities have very obvious cast times and warnings to them. Sandblast has a 1-second cast time where she does this big wind up and you can see the direction from which it's coming. So when you see the Chromie, you've got ample opportunity, excuse me, to dodge that Sandblast. You've got ample opportunity. Same thing with Dragon's Breath. It's got this big, you don't know where it's going to land, but it's got this big cast animation, this big sand dragon flying up into the sky from Chromie. So you know it's coming. So you can kind of somewhat predict and try to juke it, right? You've got opportunities for counterplay there, because and Blizzard have added more opportunities in that sense, because they removed this bonus range, because they went, hang on, Chromie having this bonus range means that she can hit you from off your screen, so you can't see these warning signs, you can't see these wind-ups to the abilities, so you've got no opportunity to dodge, and that's incredibly annoying. You know, they removed that from Chromie, while at the same time buffing the Tyrande build that lets her do exactly that, do massive damage to you from off screen that you've got no way to react to. They did it with Chromie. So again, Chromie, in terms of counterplay, there's not an awful lot of counterplay to Chromie's abilities, in the sense that you don't have much window to punish her afterwards, because they're pretty short cooldown, but you do have plenty of opportunity to make reactive plays to them, right? You can dodge the abilities because they've got these big warnings when they're coming in. On top of this, Chromie also had, you know, this big burst combo, which they also nerfed down a lot. So they made Sandblast, it used to do much higher damage. Now it does less damage, but she's got a quest, so that whenever she hits heroes, she builds up this quest. It makes it do more damage. So it rewards Chromie for being accurate. What this means is that she has to spend a lot more time hitting you with Sandblast. Its damage in the early game isn't as high, and that, you know, if you play well and you dodge around them, you're going to mitigate the damage that Chromie's going to be able to do with it later in the game. She's not going to be hitting you as hard. So if you play around it well, and like I said, you've got plenty of opportunity to play around it well, you're limiting the power of Chromie going later into the game. It also removed, just to mention Chromie had what was, in my opinion, by far the most powerful build, and I used it a lot. It was very strong, which is the Temporal Loop build, which is still there, but they mitigated it somewhat. Basically, at level 8, she gets her heroic, and one of them is Temporal Loop, which is you point and click it on an enemy hero, and this ticker timer comes down on them, and after 3 seconds, it ports them back to the location that you hit them with it at. So basically, what you would do is you would choose Bronze Talons and Dragon's Eye. The first talent gave Chromie's next basic attack a big chunk of bonus damage after using her Sandblast. And then Dragon's Eye made your Dragon's Breath, your big AoE attack, do way more damage in the center, 25% more damage in the center. And you did this big burst combo, right? Where you hit someone with Temporal Loop. You know where they're going to be in 3 seconds time. So you just time your abilities so that you hit them with the center of the Dragon's Blast, you hit them with the Sandblast, and you hit them with then your Bronze Talons and Powered Basic attack all at the same time. And it kills them. Massive burst of damage, and it kills them. And that's still in the game, so it's still something of a problem. However, it has been mitigated a little bit because of how they changed Sandblast. They made its early game damage weaker, and it's more about hitting heroes consistently with it. So the straight up amount of burst damage that Chromie does with this is lower, right? It's lower. Also, Bronze Talons is not as good because it's still decent, but you can't make as much use of Bronze Talons anymore because you get a proc of Bronze Talons every time you use your Q, your Sandblast. But now, because you want to be stacking your Sandblast by hitting them, and you get rewarded for hitting heroes consecutively, building up a hit streak gets you more points. You don't want to be throwing out Sandblasts kind of willy-nilly to get Bronze Talons procs like you could before for just consistent burst damage, because you want to make sure that you're going to hit them with Sandblast, so you have to be much more considerate with your Sandblast cast. So yeah, basically Blizzard's going in and they're trying to change Chromie. They're going, okay, wait, there's like one hit, one shot blow you up that you've got very little counterplay to. We want to really tone that down. We can doing massive damage to you from range. We want to tone that down because it's really annoying to play against. And they went and they've done that. And they try to turn Chromie into this more like kind of consistent, like yes, she's long range, kind of artillery type hero, but it's much more consistent damage. The damage is, they're trying to change it so that her damage is much more about just consistent damage from multiple Sandblasts over the course of the fight, which you do have opportunity to play around. And they've also tried to buff her other abilities, creating some zone controls with time traps, with her other heroic slowing sands. They're trying to make all that stuff more appealing and push her towards more of a sustained role, because it's really annoying to just be blown up by someone that you didn't even see coming. It's really, really annoying to take massive damage from something you couldn't see coming. Yeah, at the same time, they buffed the Tyrande thing. I don't understand it. There's other heroes as well that do similar things in terms of big damage from long range. Azmodan is a great example, right? So like Azmodan dunks, those can hit you from really far away and do a massive chunk of damage. But again, it's kind of like the Sergeant Hammer case. It's even more extreme because like all Azmodan does is big damage dunks, and that's one of his heroics that he needs to empower at the Blackpool, and then he can do a Blackpool dunk. But that's basically all Azmodan does. His other abilities are rubbish for team fighting. Right, so you get hit by the big Azmodan dunk. It's not, it's a little bit annoying. You go, oh, big chunk of damage off me. But you kind of go, well, that's all Azmodan does. Whereas Tyrande's got loads of other stuff that she does. Her basic attacks do a lot. She's got heals. She's got a stun. She's got heroic abilities. She's got a Hunter's Mark, marks people as vulnerable. She's doing loads of stuff on top of poking you with this stupid owl. Whereas all Azmodan does is dunk, really, for the most part. Well, it's not actually. He does other stuff. For example, that actually, again, motivates him to not hit you with the dunk. He's got his General of Hell, which he puts in a side lane and pushes it. So, for example, let's say, again, there are two situations. Situation number one, you're in a laning situation, right? Against an Azmodan. We've got opportunity to counterplay there, right? Because if Azmodan tries to dunk you, if he tries to hit you with his dunk, he can't hit the minions, and he wants to hit the minions because he's very good at pushing, right? He creates little minions himself, so those will do damage when they push in and soak tower shots. And he can channel this laser, which will do loads of structural damage. So Azmodan is he's very much motivated to actually clear out lanes and push them in, and his General of Hell is making minions do more damage. So he's very much motivated to push the lanes in and have the minions start smashing the structures because he can enhance them. So he wants to hit the wave with his dunk. So that gives you counterplay in the lane, because if you stand separate from your wave, if he tries to hit you, he's not hitting the wave, so he's getting less value out of his other things. He gets damage on you if he hits you, but he gets less damage out of other things. And again, much like Chromie, it does have this very obvious animation, and you do have opportunity to dodge it, much more so than the Tyrande thing, I think. On top of that, again, situation number two, you're going into fight on the shrines and Infernal Shrines. What's the big difference there? Big difference is that there's also a very strong motivation for Azmodan to dunk a second lane. Everyone's coming to fight, let's say, on top lane Infernal Shrines. Well, what if Azmodan dunks middle, wipes out the wave with his dunk, throws a general down there? That's big split push damage that's coming in. So Azmodan has this choice. He's got opportunity cost there, right? If he throws the dunk at your team and does damage to your team, that's also worthwhile, but he's not going to get that split push value. So he is very motivated in terms of his design and what his kit does to actually dunk another lane, or to go push another lane, to not actually fight you guys, to dunk you guys, because he can do really good things if he dunks somewhere else. So he's motivated to do that. Whereas, like I said, again, Tyrande in comparison is absolutely 100% totally motivated to poke you from range. Her kit is, the Sentinel build is fundamentally by design. By design, it specifically and explicitly rewards you for poking down and chunking down heroes at range with big damage that they can't see coming, really. They can do very little to avoid, and you are immensely rewarded for that, and you're not rewarded at all for using it in any different kind of way. It's just insane, right? When you compare it to these other heroes, it's just insane. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I just find it completely nuts, and like, I wanted to kind of cover that in this video because I wanted to show it to you guys and to sort of explain, like, why is this so annoying? What is so bad about Tyrande? Well, there you go. That's why. It's because she's motivated to do these big chunks of damage. She's motivated specifically to do it, that you have very little opportunity to counterplay, and that's just not fun. That's just bad game design because it's really annoying to play against. It's really annoying to play against. And I would even go so far as to say, this is a more personal opinion as well, but you know, I mean, is it even that fun for the Tyrande to do? You know, is it even that fun? I'd say certainly I like playing Chromie a lot. Yeah, this is just a personal thing, but I think landing Chromie's abilities is very fun, right? Because that's what she's an artillery mage. That's what she does. It's the core part of her kit. That's the idea, and it's very. That's like basically most of what she does. It's a bit of zone control, and then like these big chunks of damage, and again, even using the threat of those chunks of damage to do more zone control. That's what Chromie's about. So it's very satisfying because she's designed to do it. Whereas Tyrande, in my opinion, she's not designed to be chunking heroes at range. Or like she does so many other things. That's not really the focus. It's not really the focus. What's going on? You know, is it even that satisfying to chunk people halfway across the map with your Sentinel? You know, it's like, yeah, you get a little bit of quest progress. You know, it's kind of, it's more like this kind of glee of, I've been really obnoxious. That's more what's going on there. It's like, I've been super annoying. But it's not really like the core of her kit. You know, it's not designed to be even super satisfying. You know, it's not like, again, an Asmodan dunk is super satisfying because your kit like plays around it. Whereas the rest of Tyrande's kit doesn't play around poking with Sentinel at all. There's no play with that. You know, it doesn't affect your heals. It doesn't affect your, you know, relatively short range stun. Your basic attack. It doesn't affect any of that. It's completely separate. So you don't have any of that satisfying interplay with the rest of the kit. It's completely separate. It's not even that satisfying. So it's immensely annoying, and it's not even that satisfying to use compared to other heroes that are similar, that are less annoying to play against, and that are more satisfying in what they do. I think it's ridiculous. And as well, I love Tyrande, like, as a hero in general. I think this build is stupid, but I like the hero. I loved her as well before the rework, and the Owl build was much better before the rework, because back before the rework, I used to play Owl build all the time, but it was very different, crucially very different. Why? Because the core of the Owl build back then was that you would get the talents at 1 and 4. The talents at 4 was the pierce. It would let your Owl pierce all heroes hit. But the talent at 1 was the crucial bit, because it wasn't rewarding you for doing more damage at range. It did that by default, so you did have that a little bit, but it didn't reward you as much at all. Instead, the talents at 1 would reduce the cooldown of your other abilities whenever you hit someone with the Owl. And that's different. That's very different from the Tyrande we've got now. Why? Because that rewards you for using it in a team fight. Because you go into the team fight, they start attacking your heroes. You heal a hero, you land a good stun, then you throw your Owl through, you position yourself in a great way so that you can hit as many heroes in the team fight with your Owl as possible, because that gives you a bunch of chunks of cooldown reduced from your other abilities. So you can get off another heal, you can get off another stun. You can basically play that sort of semi-support role that Tyrande has. So you were rewarded for using it in the team fight instead of poking people across the map. You were very much rewarded to instead use it in a team fight, where it's not doing much damage at all because you're short range. It's not going to hit very hard at all. But what it does do is gives you cooldown reduction on your other abilities. So again, in terms of satisfaction as well, that's more satisfying because it ties in with the rest of her kit. So yeah, that's what I think about Tyrande. It's crazy because this is so new. It's not an example of something that was in the game 2 years ago or added even a year ago, and you kind of go, well, you know, it's outdated. Blizzard, it made a mistake. They've learned from their mistake. You know, it's an example of old game design philosophy. No, this has happened within the last 4 months, 4 or 5 months, within the last half a year, and they've even buffed this ability as recently as a month ago. And they've buffed this talent build as recently as a month ago, while at the same time trying to change heroes like Chromie. And it's just crazy to me, because what are they doing? Like, what's the idea? What's the philosophy here? I suspect it even makes me suspect they changed Chromie simply to differentiate Chromie from Kel'Thuzad, as opposed to trying to remove something that's a bit stupid to play against. They just changed her to differentiate it. Because if they're changing it to remove that sort of anti-fun, you're being bursted from range, then why are they buffing this Tyrande build and trying to push this build, which does exactly that? It's just stupid. And I would love to see it reworked more in the line of the old Tyrande, where instead of doing damage at range, instead you're rewarded by the reduced cooldown thing works so well because it rewards you for using it in the team fight where you're not doing stupid damage at range. People can sort of see it coming and it doesn't even hit that hard anyway, and it's more like, oh, Tyrande lands it well, it's not like I get super punished by something that I can't do anything about. It's more that the Tyrande gets rewarded by getting reduced cooldown on her other stuff. So integration with the rest of her kit, she gets rewarded for using it in a team fight and for landing it well. It doesn't really punish the enemy team directly, but it just rewards the Tyrande for her skill. And I think that's a really crucial difference. That's fun. You know, it's more fun for the Tyrande, I think, anyway. That's debatable, that's what I think. And I would argue it's not particularly debatable. I think it's almost entirely clear that it's a lot more fun for the enemy team against the Tyrande to deal with as well. So yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. Obviously something I feel pretty passionate about, so curious to see what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments, and let me know about other things that are in the game that you think are like bad game design that aren't particularly fun that you'd like to see me cover again. I think Overwatch stuff is a clear answer, and I've got a couple of other things that I think are quite annoying. I've at least 3 videos more I could do on this for sure, on specific topics that I could talk about quite a lot. So do let me know if you enjoy this, and let me know your thoughts and stuff that you'd like to see me talk about, and I will see you all then. Give the video as well a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.